on an average are 1 or 1.5% of GDP, or 400 billion rupees as the number that's being floating. And I'm not saying I have any authenticity in my numbers, because I'm just picking up from what is available in the press. What is the development expenditure of Pakistan? Have a guess. Lower than the annual losses and the subsidization. So we are not investing in our country. We are covering losses, and as a proportion of GDP, our development spending has been growing. And if true picture comes out, maybe our losses are as large as our defense expenditure or interest liabilities, which eat up most of our recurrent expenditure. These are points I've said, but to conclude, I think we need to really have more aggressive debates and build pressure on institutionalizing the monitoring and reporting on compliance of the code. Let's not stop at introducing the code, because it will not do the trick. I haven't seen any country achieve any change of scene with just an adoption of the code. That's why I didn't go into the details of the code. To me, what's important is implementation. For listed companies, SECP is the main hub that has to be given the ambit to unlisted SOEs. It'll get eventually, if it's corporatized, it'll hold them accountable under the covenants of the company securities and other key legislation and regulations, but then you need to have the capacities and you need to have the powers to be able to meddle into sector ministries, and you need to be an independent regulator. Centralized ownerships, the only point I have to make is you have to see what is suitable, and it has to be recognized that old habits die hard. But shielding the SOEs from political and bureaucratic intervention is in our interest, and upfront buy-in from legislature and cabinet would be critical. We have to establish clear guidelines on subsidies and transfer. It should be rule-based rather than dictated by individuals, give this subsidy to railway losses or stuff like that. We should really have separate accounting frame for commercial activities versus social service obligation, and it should be formula-based, approved by the legislature, and money should be dispersed, and reports should be transparently submitted to the legislature so that they know what the cost of public service obligations are. I do recommend finally setting up a focal unit, perhaps a public-private partnership based on international best practices, and this should really be mandate to collate operational and financial performance in one place so that we know what is the real dimension of a problem. Our dimension of a problem may be 1% of the Eurozone or even 0.0%, but within our context it's a lot. And we should also look at the quality of services. We should develop a scorecard, and there is methodology available, as you may know, and we should offer this information online so that the public knows what's going on. So with this, I'll end here, and I know I may have spoken for more than half an hour allotted to me, but at a later point I'd be very happy to answer questions, and you have been very delightful audience, listening very patiently before the namaz. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shamshad Akhtar. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Shamshad Akhtar's return to Pakistan is a good news. I hope you agree. She has contributed a lot. When the PICG and the SIPE 2 weeks ago requested her to join the panel discussion and to be a keynote speaker at the Islamabad Roundtable on launching of these draft regulations for corporate governance, we were not sure as to how much study is required, but she has really done a thorough study of various countries, various models, and I would rather say that if you do an assignment after this presentations, maybe the ICAP could consider giving you an extra credit for this. But this is a superb presentation. We are indeed grateful to Dr. Akhtar for taking time out and making this presentation very useful and attractive. We have now a second presentation by Mr. Asad Ali Shah, but then Maghrib prayers is at 7:10. What Asad has just suggested to me that we could take a couple of questions so that we will break at 7:10 and then we will reassemble here after 15 minutes or so, and then hopefully the presentation of Asad will continue. So let's take a couple of questions. I really love the Singapore model, not only the Temasek, but Singapore itself. It reminds me on a lighter note that in 1990, when I went to Singapore with my kids, and I happened to be in the Singapore Zoo, and we went to the washroom, and here one gentleman comes out and he has been given a chit for a fine of $50. The reason being that he did not flush, use the flush, and there was a screen that which toilets are not being flushed. So this is Singapore. Questions? Please identify yourself and raise your question.
I'm Dr. Manzoor Ahmad Mehman. I'm Commissioner Inland Revenue, posted in Karachi from FBR. And the topic of the seminar really attracted me. So I registered myself as a non-member, just wanted to attend this very interesting topic. And there is a proposal that it would have been better to coordinate with the public sector, which we are talking about. For example, the steel mill and all these entities which we have been talking. And second question is regarding the FBR, Federal Board of Revenue. There have been a lot of talking about the corporate culture. But once there was a proposal that the tax audit was given to chartered accountants, and there is a provision in income tax ordinance still that audit is being assigned to may be assigned to the chartered accountant, but that experiment was a miserable failure. So I would like to request for the comments from Madam Shamshad. Thank you very much.
If I may just say that your first observation, we are going to have interaction with the public servants and the state-owned enterprises officials, and there are at least two roundtables planned on these draft regulations with them. With this, I will now request Madam Shamshad Akhtar to answer your question.
Maybe Asad can answer the
I think not related to her presentation, so I'll take that question or comment of yours. I think first part, Moin Sahib has already responded. You see, we are holding roundtables and interacting with the public sector entities, and idea of having these conferences, these seminars and roundtables is to have interaction and input from the public sector as well as from private sector, because the public sector entities, the corporate governance affects all of us. And more specifically, of course, the public sector entities. So the roundtable that was held in Islamabad, all the public sector entities of the around, in Islamabad and northern areas were invited. And there is a plan to hold roundtable here in Karachi and one in Lahore also. And these institutions will be specifically invited and will be welcomed, You referred Pakistan Steel is one, PIA and several others. Now,